Hello, this is Tom, aka Gedeon here for Star Frontiers Gamer. And recently I did a video where I did a Alpha Dawn sample adventure expanded, where I went into what was there, how I would expand it, how I would change it, the different time points in the timeline where you could actually run that game, that adventure. And I got a lot of good feedback from it. And I've been kicking around ideas about another, we'll call it an adventure. It's not technically. That could be expanded. So I thought I would do a follow-up video to the Alpha Dawn sample adventure. And this one is based off of something in Dragon magazine. So let's do a screen share. This is Dragon number 88. It's actually August 1984 issue. Here's the cover. If you don't have this issue, you can find it by Googling on Google, Dragon Magazine 88 PDF. And you will find a link for the Anna archive. And you'll be able to download a copy of this. They're all there. They've been there for I don't know, 15 years at least. And so you can get it without actually having to purchase on eBay. So this is the cover. We want to go to page 80 and take a look at the Star Frontiers content here, which was a 2-page spread. Look at this artwork. This is by Parkinson. And you've got like some sort of a science station here, and ships in the background. There's a whole battle. You got Sathar ships, UPF ships, and a black hole with the accretion disk there swirling. And then in the distance here at the bottom of the page, you can see another little black hole here next to Parkinson's signature. So this is a gorgeous image. Totally inflamed my imagination as a kid back in the day, because I do believe the movie Disney's The Black Hole was out. So when I saw this, I was like, oh yeah, we gotta go there. Good wife's laughing. But so this is the article called the Battle at Ebony Eyes. Ebony Eyes being the twin black holes. They're of equal strength. But they're not very strong black holes, but they are twin black holes. So you don't have one stealing from the accretion disk of the other. And let's just cover the article, what's in it, and then we'll talk about how I would expand upon this. The setup here is that a captain of a tramp freighter named it was Captain Ebony Eyes, Eboniyes, Ebony Eyes is how I pronounce it. Misjumped. He had a tramp freighter and he misjumped. Now, the only way you can misjump in Star Frontiers is if you are traveling an uncharted route, or you're cutting corners on your calculations on a charted route. And I think the optimal word here is tramp freighter. So I think the good captain was cutting the corners on his astrogation and didn't take the full amount of time for the calculations for the jump, and that's how the misjump happened. Just my surmise. And he discovered this system of the twin black holes orbiting each other. And the setup for the battle here is that every year the UPF sends a science expedition escorted by some warships, because the Sathar are known to turn up in the system. So they send an escort, to handle any trouble. And lo and behold, the Sathar do show up. And so that's the Battle of Ebony Eyes. Now, the layout for the system, to switch up here to the article describes the system as being halfway between Dramune and Kakankar system. This is Kakankar is on the Versk loop here. I call this the Versk loop. Fromaltar, Versk system, Kitskar, Versk system, Kakankar. So that's the Versk. So it's halfway between Dramune and the backside of the Versk loop. And so I've placed it right here on the map, 2 little dots, because all of these systems, when it's just a circle, that's one star. We got 2 circles, that's 2 stars, so on and so forth. So I just put 2 little dots in that spot and labeled it Ebony Eyes. So that's the map there. And then I did a map of the actual a hex map for the starships. And so the 2 black holes are 16 hexes apart. And then they have 5 hexes around them is the point of no return. If your ship enters there, you ain't coming back. Your adventure is over. Total party kill. Unless you want to be creative and have some kind of a black hole plot line where they go through the black hole and end up halfway across the galaxy or universe. Who knows? But so this area within these dotted lines on here is the point of no return. The 6th hex here, ships can orbit. And then these 3 hexes in between the 2 black holes are like a Lagrange point or a Lagrange point. And because the gravity cancels out. And so a ship can just sit there doing nothing. So that's the setup. Oh, and one more thing. The article says that the presence of the 2 black holes twist the spatial and temporal fields, completely twist them. And so you get this weird phenomenon happening where any ship coming in if the ship fires laser beams, rockets, the illusionary ships also fire, and they're very close. They're within the same hex as the ship that they're duplicating, and they're complete illusions. But you have to, in the battle, specify which one you're targeting. It's random whether you're going to actually get the ship you're trying to aim for. So you figure out which ones are the illusions. Once you process of elimination, you can eliminate the illusions, then you can target the real ship. So that was just a little complication they put in, little sci-fi fantasy kind of complication they put in for the battle, but it's kind of cool. And so as the player character ship comes in here, this will happen. Now, that's the basics on this setting. There's not much to that Nighthawks battle. But how would I expand this into play? Because I think a lot of people, just anecdotally, I've heard say, I don't play the war game side of Star Frontiers. They like Star Frontiers, they just don't play the war game. So the Battle of Ebony Eyes is kind of not for them. They're going to look at this and go, whatever, and move right along. So how would we expand this? We can play out the actual discovery with the tramp freighter. It says that it's a tramp freighter, and I surmise that, maybe the captain, he cuts a lot of corners. And so, it could be that for the most part, the ship is really held together with a lot of duct tape and baling wire, and the crew get tired of it. They get tired of the captain cutting corners. They get tired of him cutting corners and risk jumping, and they're like, "Dude, you're gonna kill us sometime." And so they just reach the point where they quit. And now the captain, he's got his ship, but he needs a crew. Enter the player characters. So you could start out a whole adventure with the player characters signing on as crew for Captain Ebony Eyes. In fact, you can maybe fake them out a little bit because somebody might have read this and they might recognize the name. So give them a first name and just use that, at first. don't let on. But on their first voyage with Captain Ebony Eyes, what happens? They misjump and end up in this gravity well, this system. It's not a star system. It's I guess we'd call it a black hole system. And so right away, at first there's a little bit of panic. Like, did we jump into deep space. You're not supposed to be able to jump into deep space because the rule book says that when you misjump, you always end up in the vicinity of a star system. So they've ended up here. They don't see the light of a star. Scanning the sky, they begin to see the light of the accretion disk around the twin black holes they go to investigate. And you can play this out. Now, how do you make that an adventure? Well, you can have problems, a problematic cargo. It could be that the cargo is perishable, and that creates a complication. Although I don't think that the captain would want to stooge around in the system investigating too much if he's got a perishable cargo, because if it perishes, that's money. And it sounds like to me, my imagination says he's probably cutting corners a lot because money's tight for him. So maybe not the perishable cargo, but you could have a live cargo that could be problematic. And, what's going to happen with a live cargo? Something has to get out of its cage. Now, I don't really think that, creatures that have been packed for shipment through space on interstellar voyages are ever really going to get out of their cages. But that's the trope, so something's got to get out of its cage, or somebody's got to go feed it, gets their arm ripped off. I don't know. But complications with the cargo, maybe the cargo is highly explosive. So, powerful incentive to absolutely avoid combat at all costs. But maybe the cargo is not enough of a complication here for this. Problematic passengers. You've jumped into a system, there's no star, people begin to panic. So you have panicked passengers. Panicked people do stupid things. They don't make good decisions. You could have a self-important, arrogant passenger. We all know the type. And, they're pushy, they're arrogant, they make demands, they're very demanding. That could be a problem. That adds a complication to this. Problems with the environment. Maybe there's an alien artifact sitting in that Lagrange point between the two black holes. The Sathar do know about this system in the future, so why not in the past? So maybe the Sathar show up while the player character's here. And because it's a tramp freighter, I don't think it's highly armed. Maybe it's just a Sathar scout ship. That would be enough of a problem. Pirates. This is not far from the Dramune system. Dramune system is kind of pirate central sometimes. So maybe the pirates have found this and they just stooge here a little bit while they're taking a shortcut to the backside of the verse jump loop there. So they don't have to go around through heavily populated systems where the militia might stop them. So the pirates, you can have problems with the ship. It is a tramp freighter. Things break. So, again, we're talking problem upon problem builds up and becomes a whole adventure. Because ultimately here, for there to be an adventure, you got to have something happen here. And that usually means going down to a planet, having a landing party, going down to a planet surface and exploring. You can't go to the surface of a black hole. You just never coming back if you do. So you've got to have something here. So the two possibilities for having something here, besides all these other complications I've suggested, is that there's a derelict vessel here. For example, if you have a derelict vessel orbiting one of these black holes and its orbit is decaying, there's a countdown clock. If you're going to get on board, you got to get on board, explore it quick, grab what you can grab, learn what you can learn, and get off before before the countdown clock goes down to that 5 hex and it crosses the orbit, decays into that 5 hex zone where you ain't coming back. So that's countdown clocks are really good in an RPG. And that becomes a really good possibility. Maybe somebody's still alive on that derelict vessel. It adds. So derelict vessel. You could steal the plot from Disney's Black Hole. And it looks like there's a derelict vessel sitting there in between the two, the Cygnus. And as you approach, all of a sudden the lights come on. And so you could steal the plot from Disney's Black Hole. Now, in reality, Disney's Black Hole is actually Castle Ravenloft. The D&D module Castle Ravenloft. Because when you think about Disney's Black Hole, Rehnquist is actually the vampire. And Maximilian, his robot Maximilian, that is that's the golem, the Frankenstein monster that has been built by the crazy mad scientist. Rehnquist built Maximilian special. Maximilian's Frankenstein. And then he's got a small army of robots, security robots. These are the skeletons. And then all the crew have been lobotomized. So they're the zombies. So, and the whole Cygnus starship looks like a Gothic cathedral when it's all lit up. So it's very much Castle Ravenloft. And so you could actually run a Castle Ravenloft adventure in Star Frontiers, and that might be a cool thing to do. In fact, the derelict ship that's orbiting one of the black holes, it might have people on it. Those would be the villagers in the Castle Ravenloft story. So you could do a whole Castle Ravenloft type of thing going on here. One other neat thing, and maybe Rehnquist is actually a Sathar agent, because we talked about the Sathar knowing about this. So the player characters board the ship, they meet, and he's like, yeah, we're going to, and he invites them to dinner. Well, while they're sitting down to dinner, a Sathar scout ship docks, and a couple of Sathar with a few minions, maybe robots, maybe slave bots, maybe a pet quick death, and it's that moment like in Empire Strikes Back when they're going to dinner with Lando and the door opens and there's Darth Vader. Guess who else came to dinner? So this could be a fun thing. You can have a lot of fun with this adventure. And one other possibility, if there are ships there to dock with, and then like a Sathar scout ship shows up, just maybe Captain Ebony Eyes panics, undocks, and bootlegs out. I mean, he just goes blasting out of there, leaving the player characters behind. Now their life is really complicated, and they got to figure out, all right, we got to commandeer us a ship to get out of here. And again, it's a lot of fun things you can play with for doing an adventure with the discovery of the Ebony Eyes system. So that's one avenue. The next is taking a page from that science expedition that the UPF likes to send here, and the escort. So this could be if you've been playing the Warriors of White Light module, where the player characters are members of the Royal Marines. They'd be the crew of the Osprey. The expedition is coming through the white light system, and one of the UPF ships, one of the Space Fleet ships, suffers a complete engineering problem. And so they need a replacement vessel, and the Osprey gets activated to be part of the Space Fleet expedition. And they go along, and they're there to escort and guard the science vessel. Well, when they get there, one of the scientists has brought along a Sathar artifact. And they know this Sathar artifact interacts with gravity fields. And so they're planning on doing some experiments. And, for reasons of the experiment, the scientist wants to come on the Osprey. The Osprey is going to be stationed a slight distance from the science vessel. And they're going to be in that that Lagrange point. And they're going to be running the experiments. Well, what happens, because it's a alien Tetrarch artifact, it opens a wormhole. In these spatial fields and all of this weird science tech, right? So the wormhole opens. And it happens to open at the time that the Sathar show up, because the Sathar are going to show up. And so a Sathar fleet comes screaming in, and the Osprey can't move because it's got to guard the science vessel. Well, the science vessel gets sucked into the wormhole. Sathar destroyer came screaming in at high speed, because they weren't seen. Because, here's the other thing I would do with that battle. is you can't see line of sight through this area of the black holes. Let me throw them back up on here. And because this is important for this part of the adventure, is that this whole area, because of the accretion disk, because no light passes, can pass through the black hole. You can't see the vessels that are on the other side of the black hole. So the Sathar fleet comes screaming around, surprise the UPF vessels, and with high speed, that Sathar destroyer would literally be on top of the science vessel. Well, boom, it gets sucked into the wormhole. Then the Osprey gets sucked in, and then a Sathar scout ship, which was just lagging behind, gets sucked in. And I specify the order for a particular reason. And that is, for the purpose of this adventure, the first ship in the wormhole is the last one to arrive. Weird space science, right? So that means the scout ship will get there first. And where are they going to go? They're going to go somewhere in the universe, not the frontier. Well, I like having Earth in my universe, and we know that we're talking about spatial fields, temporal fields being all twisted out of shape. So they're going back in time to Earth. This is a Back to the Future adventure, and they end up in medieval. They end up back at Earth during medieval times. In fact, 537 to be exact. And we're going to be stealing a plot from Mark Twain, because if we're going to steal from somebody, let's steal from somebody good. Let's steal from one of the greats like Mark Twain. And so we're going to do a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, except it'll be a star frontiersman in King Arthur's court. Now remember, we specified the scout ship got there first, small little Sathar vessel. And just like in the Beyond the Frontier campaign, Nighthawk's campaign, the Sathar scout ship was hidden in a river. This one is hidden in a lake. And, we might be trying to get a little bit of a Lady of the Lake vibe going on, maybe. I don't know. So the two Sathar on board, they have a few minions, maybe some robots, maybe one or two attack creatures, Sathar attack monsters, quick deaths probably, have made contact with Morgan Le Fay and Mordred. And so Morgan Le Fay and Mordred are now Sathar agents. And Morgan Le Fay is also a witch, because in the Arthurian legends, she's a witch, right? Well, she's not a witch because she has magical powers and in league with the devil. She's a witch because she has mentalism powers. So we'll bring in the mentalism from Zebulon's Guide. And, but medieval Europe, they don't understand that. They're like, she's a witch, burn her. And so she has mentalism that makes her a more formidable opponent for the player characters. I don't generally bring in the mentalism, the psionic powers, but this would be one way I would do it. I think this would be fun, because it's burn the witch. So you're going to have the player characters. Remember, they've got that NPC scholar / scientist. He just happens to be an expert in ancient Earth legends, and he's like, "Oh my God, they're going to ruin." Our past, and we'll never exist. And so we've got to stop the Sathar. And he's there to advise the player characters. And he also happens to speak a dead Earth language called Latin, because, all the educated people of the time so that gives them a translator, because he happens to speak Latin. The educated people of the time will speak Latin. So that gives them an edge. And they've got to contact, Uther Pendragon and at Tintingale Castle. And there are a lot of interesting resources online. Like, I found this image of Tintingale Castle, where its ruins are, where they've kind of like photoshopped in or digitally placed in all these buildings and showed what this place would have looked like. And so you can actually root around and find maps like this. And here's a little bit better. Oh. Who knew that picture did that? Look at that scrolling around. So there's a lot of online support as the archaeologists dig into Tintingale Castle, you can find maps, you can find images like this to work from that you could use for this adventure, and a lot of support for you out there for this, and you can have a lot of fun with this, and work with him and try to work with him to stop Morgan Le Fay. And so you can have some role play, a little bit of adventure going on, some minor encounters, but it's going to build to a big battle. The big battle where Arthur dies and Mordred dies, and the player characters are going to take a key role in the battle because they've got to intercept the Sathar, which are aiding Morgan Le Fay and Mordred. They've got to help deal with Sathar technology and the Sathar attack monsters. And so that's the big finale, and then the epilogue afterwards is they got to find that Sathar scout ship and then get aboard and figure out how it works, because you can't leave it there in the lake for the British to find at some point. Somebody goes diving in the lake and they're like, hey, there's a spaceship in this. You can't leave it there. So they've got to get rid of it to preserve the future again. But remember, last one through, first one to arrive. So the scout ship came first, then they came. Now the Sathar destroyer shows up and parks in orbit around Earth. This is a problem. They've got to get rid of that Sathar destroyer. Normally in a stand-up battle, one assault scout is not going to survive a battle with a Sathar destroyer. If they can get behind it and stay there and use their superior maneuverability and speed, they can stay there and pound it with all their weapons, neutralizing the forward fire weapons of the Sathar destroyer. And if they're lucky and the Sathar miss several shots and they hit all the time, they might come through and survive the battle and destroy the Sathar. So this is not a good option because they want to get back to the frontier. So they're going to have to figure out some way to destroy the Sathar. Easiest way to do that would be to get control of the scout ship, write some kind of routine that's going to cause the atomic drive of the scout ship to overload after it docks with the Sathar destroyer. And so you get a nuclear explosion that takes the Sathar out. That would be the optimal way. But the player characters could be a number of ways. Whatever they do, they must get rid of all of the Sathar ships, destroy all the evidence for the sake of their own past, which is actually in the future from this point in time. So Sathar destroyer must be neutralized, but before it has been neutralized, a couple of landers have departed it. One lands in Germany, and I call this section of the adventure Castle Frankenstein. And so the first one, you had role play, you had a great big huge massive battle that they were involved in. This is a dungeon crawl. They got to work their way through this castle where the lander is in the courtyard of the castle, and the leaders of the castle become Sathar agents. The Sathar that are there are, they're lobotomizing and slave botting the peasants. And so there's going to be a few Sathar robots and attack monsters. And so this is a straight up dungeon crawl. The second phase of the adventure. So I call that Castle Frankenstein because it's Frankenstein, set in Germany. And remember, I specified 537. That's when Arthur is reputed to have died at a very specific battle where the Mordred character also died. Well, also in 537, there's something else going on historically, and that's when Emperor Justinian besieged Rome. And he was doing this to try to reunify the Roman Empire. So I've kind of picked this. It's also going on at the same time. This is a nice other little intersection in history for the Sathar to be messing around with. And so somehow that second Sathar lander is in Rome maybe, or somewhere there. And those Sathar are doing something to, I don't know, maybe take over Justinian or, help the Romans, the player characters have to get involved and solve that problem and get rid of the lander. And when they finally have done that, the first ship through is the last ship to arrive. That's the science ship. So the science ship shows up, and it's got the Tetrarch artifact, the alien artifact on there that interacted with gravity fields. So once they've gotten rid of all the Sathar ships, they go back to the vicinity of Jupiter, gravity field there, and play around with the artifact to open a wormhole. Now, one of the things with this adventure is you really don't want the setting to have a two-way corridor between Earth in the past and the frontier in the future. So you have to work out some way to remove that. And I would have the scholar that was on the ship that was the advisor for the player characters. He's like, oh, we can't bring this back because some megacorp will get control of it and they'll use it and they'll come back in the past and they'll mess up our past, which will change our present and future, and we may not even exist. It could totally, And so he advocates for destroying the artifact after the player characters go back through. And how's that going to be done? Well, you put it on something and send it into the sun. Either one of the Sathar landers that they captured or the science vessel itself. Maybe the Sathar actually got on the science vessel. Maybe something. But one of the things that I had thought is that instead of there being a Merlin character that they interacted with, that this professor, this scholar who speaks Latin, actually ends up becoming Merlin. And so he volunteers to be the guy to stay behind to preserve the past so that they could have a future. And he'll fly the ship that's going to be flown with the artifact at the sun. But he doesn't do that. He actually goes back to England and becomes Merlin and, becomes this guy who's, the Merlin of legend. I think that would be a fun little thing to write into that as an epilogue. To work that in, but you never know what the player character is going to do. They're going to be like, "No, screw this. We're going to totally set ourselves up as kings here in the past." I don't know. You never know what the player character is going to do, but you need to work some way to prevent that whole, because it'll completely change the setting. So that's a nice 3 adventure story arc in the past, set in the past on Earth, and I think that's kind of cool. And so that would be one of the expansions I would do with starting here in the Ebony Eyes system. And again, you're just using the black holes as a trigger for this. So you've got the discovery of the Ebony Eyes, you've got the battle of the Ebony Eyes, and then you got this Star Frontiersman and King Arthur's Court campaign cycle that I just detailed. And that's what I would do to play with this. I think you could have a lot of fun with this little material from Dragon number 88. So this is Tom for Star Frontiers Gamer, and I want to thank you for watching my video. I want to thank my subscribers. You guys are great. And if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe bell and like icons. Help me build the channel. And I will see you in the frontier.